Hovhannes, as already mentioned, I represent UNDP Armenia and particularly Future Today project. So Future Today project is a EU-funded project that is about youth, children, and women empowerment. But generally, like speaking, all the UN projects have some names that in most of the cases, they are not typically representing what the project is doing. That's why it's more important when we're talking about UNDP projects in general to go deep into the project beside of the name and to dig a bit deeper to understand what the project is about. So coming back to the Future Today project that we are doing in UNDP or Kolba Lab. Kolba Lab is a kind of a department of the UNDP, but it doesn't have any legal form or legal status. So it's just department within the Kolba Lab, but generally all the projects, regardless if they are managed by the Kolba Lab or they are not managed by the Kolba Lab, they have the same like rights, they have the same priorities as any other UNDP project there. So Kolba Lab was initiated, I think in 2018 or 17. So the idea of that was to turn it into a youth incubator, that they will bring the projects that then can help to the development of youth, that they can help to the development of different innovative ideas that are coming from the youth, and all the projects that more or less were initiated by the Kolba Lab, they were carrying the name Future, like Future of Work, Future Today. There are like different other projects as well. And that's why the idea was that everything what is done by the Kolba Lab is not for the current situation, but it's more for the future. So it's helping to develop better future for the people, better for the future for the youth, for the women, for different people. So, but the situation with the Future Today project is a bit different. So what we are doing, basically, we have two main outcomes that we need to come to. So there are two main outcomes that at the end of the project, by the way, the project is ending in November 2023. So there are only those two outcomes that we need to achieve. And those outcomes is actually some numerous numbers, what we need to achieve, etc., etc. But in generally, the idea is the following, that we need to bring more mechanisms currently that will help to the youth and to the women be more connected with the government. In other words, we need to bring on some mechanisms that will help to make the connection between government, between any action that the government is doing and between the population. So those connections need to be more strengthened. And that's the main aim that we are doing. So any kind of activity that we are doing, any kind of project that we are financing for the Future Today project, need to be this or that way be related to that. So, for instance, if you know the EGENG, it's the e-governance department kind of Armenia. So whatever is EGENG. EGENG? Yeah, I don't know how it's in English, but in Armenian it's Electronain, yeah, the ID card of the e-draft. So whatever you know about the e-governance that works in Armenia, it is developed either through EGENG or it is managed later with the EGENG. So one of our projects, for instance, is the support to the EGENG. So as you know that most of the Armenians, for instance, has ID cards. If I'm not mistaken, around 1.4 million people in Armenia have ID cards. But it turned out that only 7% of the people has ever used the e-signature. So it means that 1.4 million people has the opportunity to use it, but only 7% of people used it. And also, e-signature is that you can sign any electronic signature that you can sign with your ID card. So, for instance, last year the EGENG asked us to support them to make a research and understand why nobody is using it. So why the usage is so low level of the usage. The first reason was that, but the main reason was actually that the first people didn't know that the ID card is also giving them opportunity for the e-signature. because you need to keep the PIN and PUC codes whenever you are opening the ID card. There is like from the banks when you are taking the cards, the ID card the same, they have a PIN and PUC. And me, from my personal experience, because I got it whenever I don't remember when I get it, but when I get it, actually, I get it just because I was also trying to get the other passport. So that's why the biometric passport. So I took again the ID card and I throw away the paper. Actually, I didn't know that it's gonna be necessary in the near future, and it turned out that a lot of people did the same. And the second reason is that you need to have a card reader. So no ID card will work without card reader, although now they are making some sheets. So there is a MID card, so which is a mobile ID card. There is now they are going to make a bit other sheets. So I think starting from next year, the ID cards wouldn't have the microchips any longer. So the microchip wouldn't have the functionality. Each and every individual will have some login and password that is only unique for him, etc., etc. So they're trying to overcome those kind of problems. So our aim with the Future Today project is to try to help the different organizations, both governmental and non-governmental, to establish different mechanisms which will help to make those usage of different electronic tools, the connection between government and population, as I told, better. For instance, if there are some review mechanism, or if there are some mechanisms that help to give feedback to the government, it all comes to our project. So we are opening different codes for the projects that, for instance, we are looking for some solutions that can help to give the feedback mechanism or to develop better feedback mechanisms to the governmental solutions. And we are getting the different kind of proposals, and we are seeing if we can support them or no. So generally, this is what we are doing. But coming back to the topic that what we are trying to discuss today, actually is the project management. In United Nations, or in UNDP actually, whenever you are starting a project, it's a full project as in the business. So regardless that it's an international NGO kind of, there is no difference for us. We are running through all the cycles of project management. And within our big project, we are also managing or funding different small projects, which has the same kind of like project management tools, which have all the same criteria as any kind of other projects that you know. And that's why the project management is one of the most important things for the UNDP. Plus, it is very important because you can't write a proposal to get funding from the European Union or from any other donors to get money if you don't have the right project. And when we say the right project, it again goes through all the same like parts of the typical project that we have, for all the aspects of the typical project that we have. And that's why today, when we talk about the project management, I will talk a bit more about the Future Today project itself. So I'll try to bring together all those like theoretical parts, how it works on our real project. And at the same time, I'll try to say what are the typical issues that the project has. For instance, when we are funding different other types of projects, what are the main problems that the people are not aware, or why some of the projects are late than they're supposed to be, or why some of the projects are not able to achieve the goals that they have described from the day one. At the most typical example is that actually the Future Today project, it was supposed to start in the beginning of 2020, and it was supposed to last only 3 years. So it means that in December 2022, we were supposed to close the project, we were supposed to gather all the documentation together, but because of the COVID-19, a lot of shifts has happened. So the project in reality started only in October 2020. And again, because it's a project, it still was written that we are going to finalize the project by December 2022. But it is obvious that it's not possible to run all the activities that were supposed to be run in 36 months, only in 26 months. That's why we prolonged the project until November 2023. And it was called as a non-cost extension. So we extended the project, but we didn't extend, but it was a non-cost extension. So it means that we haven't asked any extra funding from the donors, with whom we are working. So it is one very important aspect that you need to consider when you are running any kind of projects, that the project can be extended. Actually, it's a normal thing for all the projects, but you need to understand if you are going to do it via like budget extension, or you are going to do the same work within the same budget, or maybe there might be some problems even there, you are getting a less budget. It can be the issue with the actually exchange rates. Currently, we are facing that kind of small problem because the money is given by the euros, but in Armenia, the UNDP is doing all the spendings in dollars, but it's converted, like our budget, internal budget is dollar budget, but we are spending all our money in Armenian dram. So you can understand what kind of changes there can happen, and nobody could expect that in 2021, €1 would be 650 drams, and now €1 is only 320 drams. So you can see that there is around like 35% decrease of the amount of in comparison between 2021 and 2022. So this is how we started, and this is how you can face different problems regardless if you are a huge entity as UNDP or you are a small project that is just getting small portion of our project. So when we are talking about the projects, it's essential to understand that the typical projects have three main characteristics. So it's a unique product or service. So each product itself, regardless if it's like a replication of previous projects, regardless if it's this or that way similar to your previous project, it should be considered as a new and unique product or service. Why? Because we have a certain starting date and ending date, and during each project we might have different problems that haven't occurred in previous time, or there might be some small particularities that you haven't seen during your previous project. So each project is typically considered as a new service or a new project. Second, when we are talking about the project, it's time limited, and the projects end when the objectives are achieved or abandoned. So the project can also be completed without achieving the goals because of some reasons we just abandoned that project, but still it needs to be closed, even if it's an abandoned project. So how we can say that activity is unique? Completely new product or service, creation of new processes, product or services new to this group of people. So when we are talking about the time limit, we have certain starting date and ending date. It may be measured as will be completed when a particular objective is achieved, or if it simply continues forever or to an unspecified end date, it is probably an ongoing business activity. So this is very important part to understand when we are talking about the project. It should have the first part. So it needs to have a start and end date. If it doesn't have a start and end date, it means that we are talking just about the business process that is going all the time within your company or within your, I don't know, NGO or within your organization that you are doing or within your team. So that's why it can't be considered as a project. This is very important thing because a lot of people, when they talk about the project, they are bringing on not particular time frame activity, but they are more talking about establishment of their business and running like daily operations, etc., etc. This is one thing that we are facing a lot at UNDP when, for instance, we are opening call for grants, different kind of grants that we can help them to do some activities. A lot of people are just sending us proposals that are not projects, but which are typically just like operations of their daily life. So they are having, I don't know, an NGO, and they are asking us money to pay the salaries, they are asking us money to pay for the accountants, etc., etc., or they are asking us money to pay for the rent of their offices. And we, or at least in future today, because I'm coming from the business background, so all previously before joining UNDP, I was running, or I was the business development director of Seaside Startup Summit, if you have heard. So that's why my experience comes more from the business side. So that's why I typically try never to sponsor, or not to say sponsor, to fund those kind of activities, or at least not to shortlist them to the further review, because for me, those are not projects. And for me, you can't get the sustainability through getting a lot of grants for your salaries, etc., etc. And plus, it's more or less on, like, it's not that easy also to track, to understand if those kind of people, or if those kind of, let's say, projects are doing everything in a right manner. Because, like, you are paying the salaries, you are giving the rent, and you never, as a donor, you can never understand if it's done in a right way, because you don't have right deliverables, you don't have enough understanding what are the main objectives of that process, etc., etc., and there is no end goal kind of there. So the end goal in that process is that just they will successfully close the financial year, and that's it. So that's why it's very important thing. What is, when we are talking about the objective can be like measured by three main criteria. So objective is achieved, time limit is reached, or objective is abandoned. So this is another thing when we are talking about objective that is very important to know, that each and every project should have a certain objective. And this is the most problematic thing, that almost, I would say that like 80% of the applicants with whom we are from whom we are trying to get some proposals, like 80% of them are missing this part. So some of them are telling us that we are going to have better educated youth. Some of them are telling us that we are going to have better connected, like, people with the government. Some of them are telling us that we are going to have a good quality of life somewhere. But in reality, it's not measurable. I mean, what means better connection between population and, like, government, let's say? There is no numeric understanding. So it's just a qualitative way, or a qualitative objective, but in reality, we need some quantitative objectives there to understand what it means. And that's why we are always asking them to put some milestones, and it should be compared with the baseline. For instance, they can say that in order to have better connected people with the government, we need to have free, let's say, technical solutions that will help them. So technical solutions can be online, offline solutions, regardless what it is, and it will help us to connect, or to get this amount of people connected with this, let's say, ministry, or with this. For instance, in your case, it can be that one objective that we are going to develop one table game. It's already an objective. And the second objective can be that we are going to disseminate the game, like, for 4,000 young people. And it's already increase of knowledge for the youth, because it's not one person, it's not two person, it's 4,000 young people, which is directly influenced by the project, but indirectly it might be their families, it might be later their friends, because each of those individuals have 10 friends, or each of those individuals represent single family. So there are 3 to 4 people in each of those families. So we are indirectly affecting, let's say, 12,000 or 15,000 people. So this is very important thing to mention when we are talking about the objectives. And it is also important to see, not from the UNDP perspective, but from that company who is applying for the grant, from them as well, because at the end of the day, they are not just I don't know how it's in English, grant, I guess. I don't know how it would be in English, but the people who just running after the grants. So if you are not that kind of person, but you are a person who really needs some support at the beginning of your career, or at the beginning of your business, or at the beginning of your project to become sustainable, it's very important to understand what you are trying to achieve, what is your main goal, what is your objective, etc., etc. In reality, when you are talking about the goals and objectives, etc., you can see millions of different names. Like most, it should be goal, objective, output, outcome, etc., etc. Because I'm not a professional in the project management. Everything that I'm telling you is more coming from the experience that I have from whatever we are doing on our daily life. I would say that those words in reality are used a lot of interchangeably, but in reality, both the output, outcome, goal, and objective, they are separate, they have separate kind of meaning. And when you will pass, I don't know, PMP exam, etc., or those kind of participation in real like project management courses, you will really see that each of them has its idea. So today we will just limit everything that we are talking with the objective, so a certain numeric outcome that we are trying to achieve. And project success of the project, it will be today traditionally that everything is done in time and we are also within the budget and we achieve the objective. And non-traditional way to say like more effective way to satisfy customer or satisfy user or satisfy stakeholder. So this is another measurement that you really need to see and discuss. So, and one important thing when you talk about the project is what can limit you to achieve the goals or the objectives that you are trying to reach. And those are mainly those six: it's the cost, scope, quality, risk, resources, and time. So you need to understand that although you can do everything like from the cost wise, it would be perfect. So you are not spending any extra penny for anything. So everything goes as it should be. But there might be another problem, which is the time. So you were supposed to do everything in 10 days, but this or that way, you did everything in 15 days. So it's already not a successful project, because the successful project means that you are doing everything in time. There is, I don't know if you have ever been in the Heathrow Airport, the Terminal 4, if I'm not mistaken. So there is the Terminal 4 from the Heathrow Airport when it was, or the 5th, the number is not important actually. When they opened it, at that time, it was the biggest in the Europe. So that terminal alone was bigger than all the previous Heathrow terminals together. And on the very first day when they opened it and announced that it's going to be open, it was a huge collapse. It was a chaos in the airport. Because one of the main reasons for that they haven't calculated everything, like starting from the quality, and they haven't calculated the risks. And one of the smallest issues that they later on opened that one of the risks that they haven't considered was the parking. So they haven't considered that, they haven't educated enough their customer service representatives or the people who are working at the airport, that the new parking lot is quite big, and to get from the parking to the terminal itself for their work, it takes not the same 10 or 12 minutes as it was supposed in the previous terminal, but it took them longer time. And in the morning, when they first open it and the people come and the people who are working there come to their work, it took them longer time. So you can imagine that the whole airport was delayed for a few minutes. So it's a small issue, it's a small like risk, but as a project, as a successful project, they haven't considered that, and everything went not that smooth. And later, when after it in Dubai, they opened their new terminal, they get a lot of lessons from the Heathrow terminal. And when they asked to the operational director of that project, let's say the biggest project, which was bigger than the Heathrow, why they were successful in comparison to the Heathrow, they thought that the first thing, we haven't done that much show out that we are opening the terminal. The only way to understand that it was a new terminal was the smell of the new paint on the walls. So that's the thing, one of the things that when you are running a project, it's better not to exaggerate it, not to make, like it's better to keep it more simple way. It's better not to make people to over expect something, and it will help you to run the project in a more smoother way. And this is one thing that you need to see, the people constraint diagram, which shows that the quality of the work is this or that way connected to the code, schedules of the time and the scope. And if you want to keep, you know that the market, market is area, the surface of the triangle. So when you will just extend this part, you can increase and decrease the surface of the triangle, which is the quality actually. So more it's everything kept as it should be, the quality would be as it was supposed to. But if you will increase or decrease some part of it, in reality you see that nothing has changed, but the amount of the qualities of the surface we are considering can get less or can get more depending what you are trying to, what changes you are trying to do. So let's see a little bit. Okay, when we are talking about the project, it's important to talk about the life cycle of the project. So the life cycle is initiation, planning, implementation, and closing. So if you will see, a lot of people actually don't care that much about the closing, which is the worst thing that can ever happen. So a lot of people believe me that when we are sending them applications or when they are sending us the applications for the review, they are actually emphasizing only the implementation part. None of the projects that we got, I think we got around like during these 2 years, maybe some 200 or 250 plus projects that they wanted us to fund. I would say that only maybe 4 or 3% of them, so only 5 to 6, let's say, had more or less all the stages in the right way written. So because some of the people, they think that only implementation is important part and it doesn't matter if you have done the right initiation, if it's the right planning, or the closing is in a correct way. And because of it, most of those projects that actually you can see, they don't have any sustainability plan as well, because they don't understand how to close the first project, so based on which they can later on work on the next years, etc., etc. So initiation phase is the phase that you need to understand project sponsor. So you need to identify who is your project sponsor. You need to identify scope and deliverables. So this is what the project is all about and what kind of deliverables you are expecting to provide at the end of the day. The deliverables are most important thing if you are like ordering some kind of services, or if you are ordering some kind of, I don't know, materials, etc., etc. Because when the project leader or the project team doesn't understand what kind of deliverables they need to provide, they don't really also understand what kind of budget it requires. They don't really understand like what kind of stakeholders they need to satisfy, etc. When we are talking about the deliverables, it might be, for instance, in your case, again, when we are coming back, it can be the deliverable, it can be the board game itself is a final deliverable, but like there can be many extra ones. So it can be the mock-ups or the designs of the deliverable. For instance, you ask me $10,000 as a grant, it's a project, you are running the whole project, and you need to break the project into multiple stages. So those are the deliverables. So the first, it can be the design of the game, or if that game is based on some kind of research, it should be the research document of that game itself. So we have done a research, it's based on secondary and primary researches, etc., etc. And it is later on discussed with many experts, and based on that, we have some paper, we have some report, which combines both the research, which combines the, I don't know, all those discussions with the experts, and based on that, we figure out that the game should have, let's say, this functionality, and it should have these colors. The second deliverable in that case would be the design of that stuff, because you might get all that information that everything works well, but the design is not done correctly. So later it can be printed or it can't be produced. So that's why should we pay you the amount if the design is not done correctly? And later, when the design is done and is approved from our side, you can go to the first deliverable, which would be the printed version of, I don't know, 300 printed games should be delivered, and it should be distributed among the schools, among the students, etc., etc. So that is the most important part of the deliverables that you need to understand. What is the deliverables that are kind of main milestones for you? We have had a lot of problems actually with this deliverable, because when we are talking to the grantees or to the people with whom we need to work, most of them actually again coming to the point that they don't consider the deliverable as something tangible. So they think that, okay, brainstorming or gathering the team, etc., itself a deliverable. No, it's not a deliverable, because you can't really justify if it was done right or wrong. So we need something that can be seen, we need something that can be measured, we need something based on which we can understand that the next step is done in a proper way. So if you are applying for any kind of grant, or if you are dealing with any kind of project that you need to put the deliverable, try to put it like in a way that will help you to achieve to your next goal. So imagine that you are making a lot of micro projects, and each deliverable is the first part of the project. Later you are finishing that project, passing to another one, and until you are reaching to your final objective or to your final deliverable. So that's how it works. The other thing is that the budget is approved, or initiation phase. When we say the budget is approved, is more about you are putting the budget together, and you need to understand if it is within the budget of the donor, or if it is within the budget of the company where you are working. Again, coming back to my previous work when I was working at Seaside Startup Summit. So one of the main problems at the beginning when we were doing it in 2016 was that it was really hard to attract international teams to come to Armenia. When we did the 2016, there were around like 30 teams or 33 teams, if I'm not mistaken, and none of them was from abroad. So all of them were from Armenia. The reason were several. The first, nobody knew that that kind of initiative was. The second, if even international startups would know that there exists that kind of initiative, nobody would come to participate, because like it was not famous, because they were not sure what to expect from there, etc., etc. And from 2017, me and my colleague, we decided that each year would have like traction projects. So we will go to different countries and we will bring international startups to participate, not going and bringing them directly, but through organizing meetups with different incubators, with different accelerators, with different universities, presenting the events there and trying to bring people on board. So each and every time it was a small project for us, because any trip, so annually we were traveling, I would say, to 3 to 4 countries during those periods, and trying to bring startups to Armenia. And we achieved to the point that in 2019, we actually had more international startups from different countries than local companies from Armenia. So in 2019, if I'm not mistaken, we had 120 or something plus startups participating, and 50+% were actually from different countries. So when we were growing that, the most important thing was the project sponsor. For instance, the project sponsor was obvious. It's the Seaside Startup itself, the company. So we know who is going to pay for that. The second, the scope and deliverables were the following. The scope was to bring, like the whole project was about bringing international teams, bringing, I don't know, international startups to Armenia. And the deliverables were divided into several things. The first was to break down what are the main countries from where we are going to bring the teams. But it was not just a random listing of the countries from which we are planning, but it was, okay, what are those countries? what are those entities with whom you are going to talk, and if you have already contact with them and they are eager to host you when you are going there, so they are eager to make you connected with those startups, international teams, or like accelerators, incubators. So if it is done, and the second deliverable was to go to the first country to see if we have achieved anything. So when we are talking about achieving anything, if you have a commitment from at least 2 or 3 teams that they would come to participate to 7 Startup Summit. So that was the second deliverable, because we had a list of, let's say, 6 to 7 countries where we were planning to go. And if we wouldn't have any internal deliverable or any internal objective, let's say this way, and if we wouldn't be able to attract 2 or 3 startups from each country, it wouldn't make sense for us to go to the next and to the next country. The next was the budget approved. So the budget was about traveling, was about accommodation, was about all the payments that we were supposed to do, that was about all the printed materials, because you had to take video of the printed materials, regardless if you are talking to 1 person, to 1 incubator, or to 10 people, or to 10 incubators. So you have to have those printings with you, because you need to leave something that after your presentation, people would like to see, people would like to, I don't know, read it, or people would like to take them with them to their places, to their houses, and later check it, and maybe they will come based on that. And there were many and many other things that in the budget, typically you might think that it's not important to consider. But for instance, when you are going to those kind of places, typically those events are not happening in the accelerators or incubators directly. So you are, because it's an IT field, so we were typically meeting them in different, I don't know, restaurants, in different cafes, in different pubs, etc. So at the time was not about lunch or dinner. You could go for like evening pub, etc., to drink something, and all those is costs. So you need to really calculate all those stuff together, and it is very important in that way already how well you know the stakeholders. So we are coming to this part already. So the stakeholders are identified, because when we are talking about the stakeholders, for instance, to attract the startups, there are typically like I think 3 or 4 stakeholders. Let's count them. The first are the universities. So you need to understand that to attract startups, you need to go to the university. For instance, let's imagine that somebody comes to Armenia to attract startups to take them to Italy. Obviously, they can't do it randomly just through organizing an event. They can't come and rent a place in Armenia, organize an event. It would be not the most appropriate way. So the first stakeholder they need to identify is the university. So either they would come to the university and start directly talking to the EPI or to the top management of the university or to the business department of the university and say that we need startup. So the second part is the incubators and accelerators. Because all the local companies, all the local startups, these or that way they are connected to one or other incubator in Armenia. And especially when we are talking about Armenia, it's like the university incubators are not that strong actually. So that's why there are many incubators and accelerators that are strong enough, and they are attracting different startups regardless from which university they are. If we would talk about the US, the situation would be a bit different. So our main stakeholder would be university rather than external incubators. The other stakeholders that we can discuss, what do you think? If we have the universities, we have the incubators and accelerators, what can be the others?
Investors.
Yeah. The first part is investors. So as you know, and none of the startups can survive without investors. And in Armenia, we need to go to talk either to angel networks or to the VCs. So there is a chance that the same startup was also in the pipeline of the university or the incubator, but there is also a chance that they haven't been there, because in Armenia, as I've mentioned, a lot of startups that are tech, like deep tech startups, most of them are not passing the incubation cycle. They are going directly to different investors, they are going directly to different VCs. So that's why it's also really important to go and to talk to those ones. And the last but not least is the governmental authorities, because every country has some kind of authority from the government that is responsible for the innovative development of the startups or for the IT sector, let's say this way. So the other way is to go and to reach them, to understand where to find them, or to ask them to send an email to everyone, etc., etc. So this is the most important part, because actually prior to going to any country, we were doing a huge research, and from every country we were just, I think, having a list of at least 25 to 30 entities which were among those stakeholders, to reach them out. Actually, when you are doing your projects, you will understand that out of those 25 or 30, only 10 would be active maximum, because a lot of companies that are, you think that are active in the field, in reality they aren't. They might even have web pages, etc., but when you go to talk to them, or when you are writing them email or calling them, you can see that most of them are not working in a proper way. We were just identifying them, and later after that we were starting to communicate, etc., to see which are actually reliable sources. The last part of the initiation is project manager, not the last, but the next part is the assignment of the project manager. It's really important to see who is taking the risks. So if you are doing a project, if you are a big company, let's say, or if you are an NGO and you are trying to put together some projects, you need to understand who is responsible for that. Is the project manager. We actually faced that kind of problem, that the project manager was assigned, but due to some political reasons, etc., that person was not able to run the project until the end. And this created a nightmare for us, because they assigned the project manager who was not answering the emails, who was not answering the phone calls. And it was a problem from the UNDP point of view. It's not a big deal, because in any time I can just call the lawyers and say that we are having a problem, to our, I don't know, procurement office, that we are having this problem, etc., just please just terminate the contract and start the process to take the money back, or if you haven't paid anything, just cancel that contract and put that people in the blacklist. So it seems relatively easy, but believe me that because the future today is a project for us as well, it means that we are having a delay. It means that we have some money to spend. It means that we have some objective to reach, which we were not able to do. And all that because of the project manager who was doing the sub-project for us, kind of subcontract for us. So, and everything went smooth when actually they changed the manager. We talked to them in a more like friendly manner, that you understand that it's a huge problem for us, which is also creating problems for us. Let's try to negotiate and understand what we can do. And we came to the point that the other person with whom we were dealing, let's say we just deleted his phone number from our phone books and put the new one and started the communication with him, and everything went smooth, although with quite long delay, but still the delay was not that problematic for the whole Future Today project. But for the small project itself, it was the initial time to make the project, I think, was 5 months, but we had a delay of 16 months. So that was a huge delay for us, but we will come to that point that that delay was a delay for, as I told, for the small project, but for the internal project, it was not a delay because that deliverable that we were expecting from that company if we would even have it closer to the end of the project, it would be still a deliverable for us. So it was smooth for that. Yeah, and at the end of the phase, actually initiation phase, when we are talking, it's the phase that you are signing the project charter. So you have prepared the document that states all these things together. So it states what's the budget, what the scope is about, how much time you have to do this, what are the main deliverables, what are the main stakeholders, who are the main stakeholders, and who is the project manager. And you are signing a charter about all this. So it's a general paper that you know that starting from this moment, you really understand what is the project about. But still, actually, you haven't done anything because it's just a paper at this stage. The second phase is the planning stage. So if previously we were talking about just the scope, now in the planning stage, the deliverables are defined in a broader way. So maybe you separated the deliverables into sub-deliverables. Maybe you added some deliverables in between the ones that you have previously mentioned. The other one, based on deliverables, a work breakdown structure, WBC, actually is defined. So this is the most important thing. And currently, when we are doing this is really important part for all of us. So we are breaking down even the deliverables into small subcategories, and we are putting it really on the, let's say, Excel sheets, or we are having it in front of us every time what we need to do, and we are running all the process based on that. And later it is connected to the schedule. So the planning is about, we are connecting it to the schedule. Both it can be time schedule and money schedule as well, because sometimes it happens that in the time you have clearly defined when that activity should be done, but you haven't clearly defined how much money you need for that. And it might be the problem that, for instance, it's the March, and you were supposed to deliver this, but to deliver this you need enough amount of money, but you didn't get it because your donor is not sending it. There is this kind of problem, for instance, for us, because we are getting all the time, like the Future Today project, for instance, we don't have the full amount of our budget from the day one. You need to do something, and the European Union gives you the second tranche, third tranche, etc., etc. And every time the tranches are this or that way a bit, like, it's not exactly that we are going to get it on the 1st of June anytime. So it can be 1st of June, it can be 1st of September, it depends on a lot of things. It depends how big the previous amount was, if there are some audit problems, if the deliverables are not properly done, etc., etc. So that's why we are always keeping some budget for us, that it might be delays from the new budget that we are expecting. And this is another thing that you need to understand, this scheduling part, how you are doing. And plans are made for management of stakeholders, communication, cost, risk, procurement, resource, including human resources. This is another important part that you need to do. And out of all these parts, actually, for me, personally, that I understood, the most important things are actually the communication and procurement, because the rest are more or less easier, at least for me, that we are running the project, because the procurement part actually can save a lot of money for you, but at the same time, the procurement part can take a lot of time from you. When you are doing the project, at least at the UNDP, we don't have the freedom just to go and buy this phone. So for instance, if I'm managing $1 million and I want to go to buy this phone for the project, in reality, it's not that easy. Because the first thing, I can buy it only from specially like dedicated companies. The second, I need to pass some special procurement process. The procurement processes, there is a lot of information in this presentation, but typically there are two types. It's request for proposals and request for quotation, depending what kind of actions you are doing. The request for proposals is that you are sending some information to a lot of companies or service providers that you know we are looking for some telecommunication telecommunication method that will help me to connect from instance from here to US. So they are free to propose me any kind of telecommunication method. It might be not necessarily the telephone, it can be a, I don't know, it can be a computer with a Zoom included in it. In that case, it's a proposal. So they're writing the proposal that, you know, we can deliver this, and it will be this. If it's our request for quotation, it's completely different. So you are directly sending them that I need this particular phone with this particular specification, and I need them to be delivered to Armenia in this exact time. And you need to get at least 3 quotations. So with the exact model that they can send, and you need to select the cheapest one out of them. One problem in Armenia, if you are doing a big project, you need to consider that most of the local distributors, they don't have the models that you are looking for any kind of thing. The second, if even they have anything that you are looking for, it's about more like material stuff. They don't have enough quantity. So that is another problem that we are usually facing with. And there might be the same issue for any of you if you are dealing with international organizations. For instance, if you are asking, again, you have a contract with the UNDP or national UNDP with US, etc., with any one of them, most probably they will ask you to pass the same procurement method as we are using. So even if that money already came to you, most probably you can't just go to any printing house and say, okay, I want to print my games. Or there will be some limit. For instance, if you are doing that printing and it will cost you less than $1,000, you can easily do it. But if it's more than $1,000, you need to get the quotation. Or the worst scenario would be that it's not a quotation or request for quotations, it's an open tender. It's the worst thing that can actually happen for the project. Why I'm telling the worst thing? Because sometimes you are getting proposals that are obviously don't have their they don't have the best quality and they don't have the best technical specifications, or the team is not good enough, but the amount that they are asking is so low that you somehow have to deal with them. So you need to go and buy something from them, or you need to accept their services. And it happened to a lot of people. For instance, one of our grantees, it was a university, not a university, but a part of the university. So we gave them the grant, and from our side, there was the limitation that if you are doing something for less than $4,000, you don't need any quotation, you don't need anything. But in their case, it was more than 4K. So, and because it was a university, so it needs to pass the governmental tender process. And the governmental tender process doesn't give you freedom to choose, like whoever provided the lowest budget, that wins the tender. So it doesn't matter if you can see even they don't have enough good quality, you can't anyhow do anything. So you need to accept that. So those people accepted that offer. It was a renovation offer. And again, those guys, because they didn't have the right team to do it, etc., it took them, instead of 3 months, some 8 months to do the renovation of the building. And at the end of the day, they even haven't finished it until the end. And the team had to do everything on its own, already out of that budget, etc., etc. So that's why the procurement part, if you are doing it on your own, or you are dealing with international organization that will ask you to run the procurement process on your own, this is something to really consider. That you need some specialist who is doing it. You need some people who really understand how to make the contracts in a right way that later on it is not turning into a nightmare for you. And the second is communication. So communication, why I'm telling is quite important, because all the processes, especially in Armenia, it comes to the point that sometimes the legal documents are not working, but the connections are working. So when you are running the project, you need to understand that you need to communicate with all your stakeholders in a right way. And especially in Armenia, one other thing that is really important is the micropolitics, because a lot of people, they don't like each other. And if you are inviting, for instance, from our activities, I can again say, when we are inviting one person to the event, you really need to understand if you are inviting the second one as well. Because it might be the problem that none of them will come because they know that he's attending and he's attending or she's attending. So that's why this is just a simple example how it wouldn't work. When we are talking about more costs,
You have 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Leave some time for questions, you know.
Yeah. Okay, the next part is the implementation part, is the project being decided and developed, procurement takes place, project work is underway, project must be monitored and changes managed. This is actually the most important thing here if we are talking about the implementation. So you can do everything correctly, but if you are not monitoring it, if you don't see that everything goes as it's supposed to go, you might come to the point that at the end of the day, you will receive a call from your project manager and say, okay, tomorrow is the deadline, but we haven't done anything yet. So have you seen the $1 billion code, the movie? Okay, you can check it on the Netflix. It's actually how the Google Earth was. Actually, I don't know how true it is, but they say that it's how the Google Earth was developed, and it was not developed by the Google's people, but it was developed by completely other people, and Google just solved that code. So you can just check it, and it says how you can have all the money from the German government, or not government, $1 billion code. And how it's not working just because they haven't monitored that everything goes smooth. And communication to stakeholders is an important ongoing activity. So every time you need to send them, there are many ways to whom what to send, to how important this kind of stakeholder. Actually, I will send this presentation later to you, so you can just go through the pages. I think it's around like 200 pages. So I compiled everything that I was able to. And the last one is the closing phase. So it's a reporting, closing out procurement final payments, identify lessons learned, and celebrate. So this is one important thing, like from this part, because all those like pre-start are this or that way understandable that you need to do. The identification of lessons is the most important out of these four, because anytime when, for instance, when we finish the Future Today project and we will approach to the EU donors or to any other donors to get some other funding, they are going to ask us, okay, what they will learn and what new objectives you are trying to achieve based on the lessons that you have learned. The same is about your project as well, regardless if it's an NGO, if it's a non-profit profit organization, so no difference. Still, you need to understand how it was working, what you have done wrong, what you need to do right. So just a small example again, coming back from the Startup Summit. One small thing that we all understood during our trips, that you never go to attract startups alone. I don't know why it works like that, but the first year we were just going to random different countries, let's say me, my friends, or separately, I was going to this country, he was going to other country. And when we came back, we just talked to each other that actually let's go together to the same country. Okay, it's twice the budget for the flights, for the stay, etc., etc. That sometimes it comes to the point that alone you can't answer all the questions, or if those people who are sitting in front of you, they are like 4 or 5 from the same company, and there is something that you are not sure what to answer, or you are not enough like educated in that field, the second person can complement you. So we did that lessons learned, and actually in the 2018 and 2019 we were already going with 2 of us, and it actually helped a lot. And I would say that that was one of the main lessons learned from that part. So it's a small thing that you can see what the difference alone or with somebody else, but in reality, later on, we figure out that it was the most important. So critically work on the budget. It a lot of increased the budget that we are doing, but it also a lot of supported to the end goal. So we were able to reach the goals that we were putting with that way of working. So this is actually just a small part about the project management from experience that I have. As I told, I will send all these presentation materials. Now you are free to ask like whatever you want. It can be about UNDP, it can be about project management, it can be about Seaside.
I have a question about like if you run out of time to moderate your project.
The first thing actually, if you already see that you are running out of time, the first thing you need to justify why it is happening like that. So if the justification is that I haven't done everything correct or I am not eligible to do it, there is nothing to do then just to change the project manager and try to see if you can recover.
What if it's something that's out of your control, like for example, the stakeholders are not?
Yeah, because for instance, the UNDP, my project, typically any project in UNDP, they have a few managers, let's say this way. There are a few from internally that are managing you from UNDP. So you have portfolio managers, you have higher top management that every weekly or monthly they are gathering all together to see if you are doing everything correctly. If they see that you haven't done anything correctly, they can intervene anytime, or they can even, I think, I'm not sure about the regulations, but most probably they can kick me out and bring another person for that, most probably. Beside of it, I have like managers from the European Union delegation, so who are working in Armenia, and we are also getting some audits from the whole European Union, not local delegation, but from abroad. So we are getting auditors from, for instance, last year it was from Switzerland. He came, he was staying for, I think, 1 week, and he was checking if everything goes smooth, if everything goes well. So that's the reason that at UNDP it's more or less not possible to run out of time. It means that your management and the EU haven't done something correct. It might be that your relationship with top management is strong enough that you are anytime that they are asking you if everything correct, you are saying yes, 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 I will show you the docs, and you are doing something this way. But because you have also annual reports, it means you need to be like really crazy smart to try to cheat. But for instance, in our case, we ran out of time not because we did something wrong, just we started the project 10 months late from the initial day that we were supposed to start, and the justification was easy for us. You know that there was a COVID, we still have the funds, we still haven't managed to deliver all the deliverables we were supposed to, because the team is only the same 4 people and not 8 people, so we don't have extra people, we don't have extra knowledge, etc., etc. So, okay, no problem. We will extend your project until next year, because they see that at least for the 10 working months or 2 years that we are actually working, we are doing everything even like a bit faster than we were supposed to.
Any other questions? Yeah. Who's bringing it? And then.
No, actually, the project start date is going from the I suppose the name. Okay, implementation. So because prior to that, it can take you a lot of extra time. For instance, again, coming to the UNDP, the project that we are running for 3 years, most probably the project paper was written during like 1.5 years. it doesn't mean that all that period you are writing that document. The document itself is only like, I think some 30, 40 pages, and most of them is actually blah, 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 because the UNDP has a lot of formalities, etc., etc. But during that 1.5 years, you need to find, for instance, in Armenia, what we need to find. It always should be done with the government. So the UNDP can't just fund a project for himself. Even if I will write the best project in the world and it will help all of the Armenian people to get richer by, I don't know, 600% annually, nobody will sponsor it if it is not backed by the government. So if I don't, UNDP is it's an international NGO, let's put it this way, but it doesn't matter. Nobody wants to give money to somebody that in reality maybe government doesn't work. So it means if my project that I have written is really great for all of us, but the government is not signing that is agree with that project, it's not their priority. So
can I just make a note? The project start date is specified in the contract. The contract specifies when the project starts. And if you sign the contract and the project starts, if you do not meet that start date, you have to amend it. Right? So usually they say the project start date is, this date, and that would be the date you have to start. And sometimes, depending, I mean, in the case of UNDP, it's a little bit unique because they go through, they have the capacity to go through the whole project development phase. A lot of that is not even seen in the project implementation phase. So the start of the implementation is usually suspended. Yes.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, yeah, we discussed about all the things they are all important, but what is the most important factor in the project to make the project successful? Like, what is the most important thing?
actually, I think I would say the team. Yeah, because let's say that all the bad comments that within the UNDP we are getting about not our project but for any other projects, or it's mostly nobody says that the project was written wrong, nobody says that the project budget was wrong. All the time it's that the team manager is not able to manage the project. That is because especially at UNDP the projects are written so detailed that if something goes wrong, it means that the manager is not managing, or it was just very bad written from the day one. But again, as I mentioned, you have like manager, auditor, etc., etc. It's more or less impossible to be because of the project. It's mostly because of the team.